My dad destroyed our family with his secret life. What he left behind broke me. They say you never really know people. You think you do. You think you know the shape of their heart, the cadence of their breathing, the secrets they keep in the bottom drawer of the nightstand, but you don't? Not really. We see what we want to see. We paint over the cracks with our own hopes and call it a portrait of a happy family. My name is Mike. I'm 32 years old now, sitting on a porch in Ohio, watching the sun come up over a life I had to build from scratch, literally from the ashes. If you had asked me 15 years ago where I'd be, I would have told you I'd be an architect living in a glass house in Chicago, probably driving a Porsche. That was the plan. That was always the plan. My dad, Tom, made sure I knew it. "You're a winner, Mikey," he'd say, his hand heavy and warm on my shoulder. "Winners don't settle." But my dad was a liar, and his lies didn't just ruin his life. They detonated ours like a bomb in the basement of a perfect suburban home. This isn't a happy story. Not for a long time, anyway. It's a story about how much a human being can lose before they break. It's about the specific metallic taste of poverty. It's about the day I stood over a grave and felt nothing but pure, white-hot hatred. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand the crash, you have to understand the flight. You have to understand how high up we were, or at least how high we thought we were. I grew up in a town called Centerville, just south of Dayton. It was the quintessential American backdrop. We lived in a 2-story colonial on a cul-de-sac called Whispering Pines. We had a golden retriever named Rusty. We had a basketball hoop in the driveway that Dad and I used every single evening until the sun went down and the streetlights flickered on, buzzing with that electric hum. My dad was a legend in our neighborhood. He was the guy who organized the 4th of July block party every year. He'd rent the biggest bouncy castle for the kids and buy hundreds of dollars worth of fireworks. I remember being 12 years old, watching him light a fuse, running back with that goofy grin on his face, the sky exploding in red, white, and blue. "Look at that, Mikey," he'd shout, pointing at the sky. "Top shelf. Only the best for us." He was a salesman, regional vice president of sales for a logistics company. I didn't really know what that meant, only that it involved a lot of phone calls, a lot of golf, and a lot of business trips. He was always driving his silver Mercedes, a lease, I learned later, always a lease, to places like Cincinnati, Louisville, Indianapolis. My mom, Linda, was the quiet power behind the throne. She was a gentle soul, a former school teacher who stopped working to raise me and my younger sister, Sarah. Sarah was 5 years younger than me, the princess of the family. Dad spoiled her. Rotten. If Sarah wanted a pony, Dad would find a way to get her a pony. But Mom was always anxious. I remember walking into the kitchen when I was 16. Mom was sitting at the table with a calculator and a stack of bills. She was rubbing her temples, her eyes squeezed shut. "Everything okay, Mom?" I asked, grabbing an apple from the bowl. She jumped, startling. "Oh, Mike, yes, honey, just math. I hate math." She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She swept the papers into a drawer before I could see the red ink. That evening, when Dad came home, the energy changed. He walked in like he owned the world, tossing his keys on the counter. "Pack your bags, troops," he announced. "We're going to Disney World next month," Sarah squealed with delight. I high-fived him, but I saw Mom in the corner. She didn't smile. She looked terrified. "Tom," she whispered later that night. I was supposed to be asleep, but I was listening through the vent in my floor. "Tom, we can't afford Disney. The credit cards are maxed. The second mortgage—" "Stop worrying, Linda," Dad's voice boomed, cutting her off. "I closed the Henderson deal. The commission check is coming. It's huge. It'll wipe out the debt and leave us with plenty. You gotta spend money to make money, babe. You gotta look the part." "You gotta look the part." That was his mantra. The crash came in 2008. I was a freshman in college at Ohio State. The economy tanked. The logistics industry took a hit. But Dad kept spending. He bought a boat. A boat? We lived in Ohio. He parked it in the driveway, a shimmering fiberglass monument to his denial. I came home for Thanksgiving that year. The house felt different. The furniture was the same, but the air was thick. Heavy. Dad wasn't the loud, boisterous hero. He was twitchy. He was sweating, even though the house was freezing because Mom had turned the thermostat down to 62 degrees to save money. We sat down to dinner. The turkey was smaller than usual. There was no wine on the table. "So, Mike," Dad said, his voice cracking slightly, "how's school? You keeping those grades up? You staying on the dean's list?" "Yeah, Dad, it's good. Tough, but good." "Good, good. You need that degree. You need a safety net." He laughed, but it sounded like a bark. "World's a tough place right now." Then the phone rang. We all froze. In those days, if the phone rang during dinner, it was family. But nobody moved. "Aren't you going to get that?" I asked. "Let it ring," Dad said, staring at his mashed potatoes. "It might be Grandma," Sarah said, reaching for the cordless phone. "I said leave it." Dad slammed his fist on the table. The silverware clattered. Sarah flinched, tears welling in her eyes. Dad never yelled, not like that. The phone rang 4 times, then the answering machine picked up. A robotic voice filled the dining room. "This is a message for Thomas Miller regarding an urgent legal matter with the Franklin County Court. Please contact us immediately regarding the outstanding lien on—" Dad ripped the cord out of the wall. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. "What was that, Tom?" Mom asked, her voice trembling. "Nothing," he muttered, standing up. "Scammers. Just scammers. I'm going to the garage." He walked out. He didn't eat dinner. That was the beginning of the end, though we didn't know it yet. 3 months later, on a Tuesday in February, I got the call. I was in the library, studying for a calculus exam. My phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Mike," she choked out, "you need to come home." "What? Why? Is it Dad?" Yes, it's Dad. The police just left." "Police? Mom, what happened? Is he in jail?" "No, honey," she sobbed, a sound so broken it haunts me to this day. "He's gone. He had a heart attack. He was driving. He crashed the car." The drive home took 2 hours. I don't remember a single minute of it. I just remember the gray sky, the dirty snow on the side of the highway, and the feeling that gravity had suddenly increased tenfold. When I got to the house, there were cars in the driveway, neighbors, family friends. They were bringing casseroles, lasagnas. Why does everyone bring lasagna when someone dies? It's like we try to smother grief with cheese and pasta. Mom was sitting on the couch, surrounded by women from the church. She looked tiny, frail. I hugged her and she felt like a bird, all bones and trembling. "I'm here, Mom," I said. "I'm here." We spent the next 3 days in a fugue state planning the funeral. Dad had no life insurance. We found that out on day 1. He had cashed out the policy a year ago. The bank accounts were empty, literally empty. The checking account had $42.18 in it, but we had to bury him. Mom put the funeral on her last credit card that wasn't maxed out. She wanted to give him a dignified send-off. "He deserves it," she kept saying. "He worked so hard for us." The funeral was at the First Baptist Church. It was packed. Dad knew everyone. People stood up and told stories about Good Time Tom, how he'd helped them move, how he'd bought their kid a fundraiser chocolate bar, how he was a pillar of the community. I sat in the front row, wearing my only suit, holding Sarah's hand. She was 15. She was devastated. Daddy's girl, left alone. The service was ending. The pastor asked if anyone else wanted to say a few words. The back doors opened, the heavy oak doors creaked, and a gust of cold wind blew into the sanctuary. Heads turned. A woman walked in. She wasn't from around here, you could tell. She looked country, worn down. She was wearing a black dress that looked like it came from a thrift store. Her hair was frizzy, dyed a harsh yellow blonde. She was clutching a purse like a shield, and holding her other hand was a boy of about 10. I squinted. The boy was wearing a clip-on tie and a dress shirt that was too big for him. He had messy brown hair. He had a cowlick on the left side of his forehead. I touched my own forehead. I had the same cowlick. The woman walked straight down the center aisle. The clicking of her heels on the hardwood floor echoed like gunshots. Click, click, click. She stopped 10 feet from the casket. She didn't look at the pastor. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked directly at Mom. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the woman said. Her voice was thick with a Kentucky accent, shaky but determined. "But my son has a right to say goodbye to his daddy, too." The silence that followed was so profound, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Mom stood up slowly. She looked at the woman. Then she looked at the boy. She looked at the boy's nose. Dad's nose. She looked at the boy's chin, Dad's chin. "Who are you?" Mom whispered. "I'm Brenda," the woman said, "and this is Tyler. We're Tom's family from Lexington." Mom didn't scream. She didn't faint. She just made a sound like a balloon deflating, a small, pathetic whimper. And then she sat back down, staring at the altar, her eyes glazed over. The rest of the funeral is a blur of shouting, whispering, and chaos. I remember ushering Sarah out the side door while the deacons tried to talk to Brenda. I remember the look on that little boy's face. Tyler. He looked terrified. He looked just like I did when I was 10 and broke a window. We went home. But it wasn't home anymore. It was a crime scene. That night, the truth started to come out. Brenda didn't leave. She came to the house. She had proof. Photos, birth certificates, letters. Dad had met her 12 years ago at a racetrack in Kentucky. He told her he was divorced. He told her mom was his ex-wife who was mentally unstable and wouldn't let him go. He told her I was his nephew. He had built an entire second life. He rented a townhouse for them in Lexington. He bought them cars. He went on vacations with them. Those business trips to conferences. They were trips to Dollywood with Tyler. And the money was the key. Dad wasn't just a bad gambler. He was funding 2 middle-class lifestyles on one salary while dumping thousands into slot machines to try and make up the difference. He had forged Mom's signature on a second mortgage. He had stolen my college fund. He had drained Sarah's savings account. He had borrowed money from loan sharks, guys who started calling the house a week after the funeral asking for Tommy. We were destitute. The bank took the house 30 days later. I'll never forget the shame of the auction. Strangers walking through our bedrooms, opening our closets, judging our lives. "Nice crown molding," a guy in a polo shirt said to his wife. "We'll have to rip out this carpet, though. Smells like dog." I wanted to punch him. I wanted to scream. This was our life. This was where we had Christmas. Instead, I packed boxes. We moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a complex called The Meadows, which was ironic because there wasn't a blade of grass in sight, just asphalt and dumpsters. Mom fell apart. She couldn't work. She couldn't get out of bed. The betrayal broke something fundamental in her brain. She spent her days watching daytime TV, crying softly, and looking at old photo albums, trying to figure out which smiles were real and which ones were lies. I had to drop out of Ohio State. There was no money, and Mom needed me. Sarah needed me. I got a job at a distribution center for Amazon. 12-hour shifts, standing on concrete, scanning barcodes, packing boxes for other people's happy lives. My back ached. My feet bled. But my heart was black. I hated my father with a ferocity that scared me. I hated him for dying. I hated him for lying. I hated him for that boy, Tyler. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw Dad. I saw his eyes. I saw his jawline. And I wanted to smash the glass. Things got worse before they got better. A year into our new life, Mom got sick. It started as a cough. She wouldn't go to the doctor because we didn't have insurance. "It's just a cold, Mike," she'd say. "Save the money for Sarah's school clothes." It wasn't a cold. It was pneumonia, complicated by a weak heart. I came home from a night shift to find Sarah screaming. Mom wouldn't wake up. The ambulance ride, the ER waiting room with its fluorescent lights and sticky chairs. The doctor coming out with that look, that sympathetic professional, "I have bad news" look. She was gone. She died of a broken heart. I truly believe that. The pneumonia killed her body, but the betrayal killed her spirit long before that. So there I was, 21 years old, both parents dead, a 16-year-old sister to raise, a mountain of debt that wasn't mine, and a minimum wage job that was the valley of the shadow of death. I sent Sarah to live with our aunt in Florida. I couldn't take care of her. I couldn't even take care of myself. Giving her up was the hardest thing I ever did. I put her on a Greyhound bus, hugging her tight. "I'll come for you," I promised. "Once I get on my feet, I promise." She cried. I cried. And then the bus pulled away, taking the last piece of my heart with it. I was alone. I moved into a studio apartment that was basically a closet. I slept on a mattress on the floor. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter. And I started drinking. Whiskey was cheap. It burned the anger away. It made the nights pass faster. I'd come home from the warehouse, crack a bottle, and sit in the dark, listening to the neighbors fight. I thought about ending it. I really did. I'd stand on the balcony, looking down at the parking lot, thinking about how easy it would be to just step off, to stop the noise, to stop the bill collectors, to stop the memories of the woman in the back row of the church. But something stopped me. It wasn't hope. It was spite. I thought about Dad. I thought about how he took the coward's way out. He died and left us with the mess. If I died, the mess won. If I died, Dad won. "No," I said to the empty room. "Screw you, Dad. I'm not you." I poured the whiskey down the sink. It smelled like antiseptic. The next day I made a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was a plan. I needed money, real money. The warehouse wasn't cutting it. I went to the library and looked up trade schools. I couldn't afford college, but maybe I could learn a trade, HVACs, plumbing, electrician. I found a program that paid you while you apprenticed. It was grueling work, crawling under houses, working in attics in 100-degree heat. But it was a path. I worked 80 hours a week. I saved every penny. I ate beans and rice for 3 years straight. I wore my boots until the soles fell off and I had to duct tape them back together. I paid off Mom's funeral. I paid off the small debts. And then I found the box. I was cleaning out the last of Mom's things, preparing to move into a slightly better apartment. I found a shoebox in the back of her closet. Inside were letters from Brenda. They were unopened. Mom had never read them. My hands shook as I held them. I wanted to burn them. I wanted to throw them in the trash. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I opened one. "Dear Linda," it read in shaky cursive. "I know you hate me. I don't blame you, but please know I didn't know about you. He told me he was divorced. He told me you were crazy. I'm just a single mom trying to raise a boy. We're losing our home, too. Tyler asks about his brother. He just wants to know if you're okay." I sat on the floor and read all of them. Brenda wasn't a villain. She was a victim. Just like Mom, just like me. She was a woman who fell for a charming man who lied to her. And now she was raising a son alone, in poverty, with the stigma of being the other woman. And Tyler, my brother. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. He would be 14 now. I wrestled with it for a week. I paced my apartment. I yelled at the walls. But the anger was fading, replaced by something heavier. Guilt. I was the older brother, and I had left him behind. On a Saturday morning, I got in my beat-up Honda Civic and drove to Lexington. The address on the letters led me to a trailer park on the outskirts of town. It was grim, weeds growing through the gravel, rusty swing sets. I knocked on the door of Lot 42. Brenda opened it. She looked 10 years older than she had at the funeral. She was wearing a waitress uniform, looking exhausted. She recognized me immediately. Her face hardened. "If you're here to yell at me," she said, "save your breath. I've heard it all." "I'm not here to yell," I said. I read your letters." Her shoulders slumped. "Oh. Is he here?" She nodded and called back into the trailer. "Ty, come out here." Tyler stepped into the doorway. He was taller now, lanky. He had acne. He was wearing a tattered Metallica t-shirt. He looked at me, and I saw the same hesitation I felt, the same wariness. "You're Mike," he said. "Yeah, I'm Mike." "You're the rich brother," I laughed, a harsh, barking laugh. "Rich? Kid, I duct taped my boots this morning. I'm an apprentice electrician. I'm eating ramen noodles 5 nights a week." He looked at my boots. He saw the tape. He looked at my car. He saw the rust. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "We eat ramen 6 nights a week. Well, I said, I guess we have that in common. I took them out to lunch. Denny's. We ordered the Grand Slam. Tyler ate like he hadn't seen food in days. We talked. It was awkward at first, navigating the minefield of our shared father, but slowly the walls came down. Tyler told me about school. He was getting bullied because his clothes were old. He loved drawing but couldn't afford art supplies. Brenda told me about working double shifts at a diner just to keep the lights on. They weren't monsters. They were survivors. He lied to all of us, I said, stirring my coffee. He played us against each other. He was a good dad when he was there, Tyler said quietly. He taught me how to throw a baseball. I felt a pang of jealousy, then sadness. Yeah, he taught me too. I miss him, Tyler whispered. Is that bad? No, I said, reaching across the table to put a hand on his shoulder. It's not bad. You can miss the parts of him that were good and hate the parts of him that were bad. It's complicated. That lunch changed everything. I didn't move to Kentucky, but I started visiting, once a month. I'd drive down, bring some groceries, maybe a sketch pad for Tyler. I became a big brother. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to rewrite the story. Dad wrote a story of lies and separation. I wanted to write a story of truth and connection. 5 years passed. I finished my apprenticeship. I became a master electrician. I started my own small company. Miller Electric. I hired a couple of guys. I worked hard. Honest work, no gambling, no schemes. I brought Sarah back from Florida. She moved in with me. I helped her get into nursing school. We were a family again. And Tyler? When Tyler graduated high school, he didn't know what to do. He couldn't afford college. Come to Dayton, I told him on the phone. What? Come to Dayton. Live with me and Sarah. I'll hire you. You can apprentice with me. Learn the trade. It's good money, Ty. Honest money. There was a long silence on the line, then a choked sob. You'd do that for me? You're my brother, I said. Of course I would. That was 3 years ago. Today Tyler is one of my best employees. He's hardworking, honest, and funny as hell. He looks so much like Dad, it's scary sometimes, but he has none of Dad's deceit. He has integrity. Sarah is a nurse at the local hospital. She's getting married next spring. I'm going to walk her down the aisle, and me. I met a woman named Jessica. She's a teacher. She's kind, patient, and she knows everything. She knows about the debts, the trailer parks, the drinking, the grief. She loves me not despite my scars, but because of them. We just bought a house, a fixer-upper, sure, but it's ours. Last weekend we had a barbecue. Me, Jessica, Sarah, her fiancé, Tyler, and even Brenda came up for the day. I stood at the grill, flipping burgers. The smell of charcoal and cut grass filled the air, the same smells from my childhood. I heard laughter. Sarah was teasing Tyler about his new haircut. Brenda was helping Jessica set the table. I looked around the yard. It wasn't a mansion. I wasn't driving a Mercedes. I wasn't a king of the Midwest. I was an electrician with a mortgage and calloused hands. But as I looked at that mismatched, broken, glued back together group of people, I realized something. This was real. There were no secrets here, no hidden bank accounts, no second families in another state. We had all been through the fire. We had all been burned by the same man. But we didn't let him burn us down. We built something new out of the wreckage. I looked up at the sky. It was a clear blue Ohio sky. I thought about Dad. For a long time, I wondered what I would say to him if I could see him one last time. Would I scream? Would I punch him? But standing there, listening to my family laugh, I realized I wouldn't say anything. I didn't need to. He missed this. He missed the real stuff because he was too busy chasing a fantasy. He died alone in a motel room, thinking he was a failure because he didn't have the money. But he was a failure because he didn't have this. I flipped a burger onto a bun and called out, "All right, y'all, chow time." Tyler ran over, grabbing a plate. "Hey, Mike, save me the big one." "Earn it, rookie," I grinned, playfully shoving him. He shoved me back, laughing. And in that moment, I knew. We made it. We survived. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't Mike the victim, or Mike the debtor, or Mike the son of the liar. I was just Mike, and that was enough.